Begin today the Gemara on Daf Mem Dalet Amud Aleph at the Mishnah. Zok the Heilige Mishnah Shloisha Minin Isurin Ben Nazir. There are three different things that are also for a Nazir. This is the same introduction as we had in the beginning of this Pedic. So what are the three Isurim? Hatume, V'hateglachas, V'hayetzim min hagefen. Not to become tame to a mace, not to cut the hair, and anything that comes from a grapevine, not to eat. So here the Mishnah will go through distinctions there are between these three different halachas. Chaymer betume or betaglachas mibiyetzim min hagefen. There's a stringency to the halacha of tumeh and taglachas, not to cut the hair, that's more than the isser of not to eat from a grapevine. Sha'atume v'ataglachas. When it comes to tumeh and when it comes to taglachas, soisrin. If you become tameh, you got to start your naziris all over again from the beginning. Now taglachas, if you cut your hair also, to some extent you have to count over again, because you have to have at least 30 days of not cutting your hair to then do the mitzvah at the end when you cut the hair with the karbanis. But v'hayetzim min hagefen, if you eat anything that comes from a grapevine during your naziris, ein esaiser. You don't nullify your days of naziris, you just continue going. On the other hand, there's a stringency to the isser not to eat from a grapevine more than tumeh and taglachas. What comes out of a grapevine? There is no heter from the general halacha that you're not allowed to eat from grapes or wine. No heter for it. As we learned before in the Gemara, this includes even Kiddush and Avdallah. Okay, that's Kiddush and Avdallah. The wine is even just midrabanan according to most opinions. But even if a person has a mitzvah to drink wine, when's that possible? The Gemara said if a person made a shvuah that he's not gonna, or that he is gonna drink wine, that is. So, but still, if he's a Nazir, he can't drink that wine, and there's no heter for it. Tumeh v'taglachas, on the other hand, when it comes to tumeh and taglachas, hutru meklalan, there is a heter from the general issa that usually applies. V'taglachas mitzvah. So you have a taglachas of a mitzvah. That's if a Nazir is also a mitzvah and he has a mitzvah to cut his hair. Or b'meis mitzvah. And by a meis mitzvah, when there's no one available to bury the dead person, so then even a Nazir is allowed to go and bury him. So you see by both of them, there's a heter for this. Now the Mishnah continues, there's a stringency in a Nazir that became tameh, that's more than if he cut his hair. If a person becomes tameh, no matter how many days of naziris he was keeping or he has to keep, you have to start all over again. The chayav and aleh carbon. And besides that, you have to be matar yourself, which takes 7 days, and then you cut your hair actually, and then you bring a carbon, and then you start all over again. The tiglachas, a person that cut his hair in the middle of his naziris, einas yiseres ela shloishim. So you don't have to start your naziris all over again. You're going to have to start over to have 30 days that you didn't cut your hair, but not more than that. And also, you don't have to bring any carbon like it is with a nazir that became tameh. Okay, so this is the distinctions of the halachas of these three halachas that apply to a nazir. Now the continuation of the Gemara here will bring the source for all of this from psukim. But the way the Gemara goes about this is, it shows that really, logically, you would think that you should compare one to another. And whatever leniencies or stringencies is found by one of these halachas should apply to the other. And the Gemara is going to show this not only logically, but also by a kal v'chaimer. That through a kal v'chaimer, it would make sense to say that we should compare them. And only because there are special psukim, they teach us that they're different from each other. These distinctions that the Mishnah just said. So, Zak the Gemara v'tumeh, regarding the halacha of tumeh, loy tutar miklala. So it should not have been, there should have not been any heter from the isser of becoming tameh. Why? I could tell you that there's a kavachimer miyayin. I should learn this with a kavachimer from the isser of drinking wine for a nazir. If when it comes to wine. So wine is lenient because it doesn't nullify any of your naziris if you drank wine. But nevertheless, it has the stringency that there's no heter ever for a nazir to drink wine, even if there's a mitzvah. Not becoming tameh for a nazir, which is more stringent, because if you become tameh, it nullifies your naziris, and you have to start over again. For sure, the halacha should be that there should be no heter for becoming tameh ever. That's logically, or even a kal v'chaimer. So Talmud Laimar, therefore we have a pasuk, and it says this by the Nazir, la'aviv v'li'imay lo yitama. He should not become, the Nazir does not become tameh to his father and mother. Now this is an extra pasuk, because it already says that he's not allowed to become tameh to any mace, Why does it say specifically la'ave v'li'imai? La'ave v'li'imai lo yatama. So what this teaches is that he can't become tummy to his father or mother. Aval metamu l'mes mitzvah. But he is allowed to become tummy to a mes mitzvah. So there's a pasuk teaching me this heter of a nazir to become tummy to a mes mitzvah.
So he can't do it for his mother and his father.
If they're a mes mitzvah, yes. But if not, no, you can't. If someone else is available to bury them, then the nazir is not allowed to become tummy to them. V'yayin, a similar question, the Gemara continues. V'yayin yutar miklaloi, by wine. The halacha should have been logically that yutar miklaloi, that there should be a heter to drink wine if it's a mitzvah. Kavachaymer mitome. And I could learn this with a kavachaymer from tume. Ma tume shisei seres, tume, which has such a stringency that it nullifies Naziris. If he becomes Tameh in the middle, he has to start over again. Hutra miklala. But nevertheless, it has the heter, it has the leniency that he can become Tameh Tames Mitzvah. Yayin she'enis leiser. Wine, which is lenient. It does not nullify. You don't have to start Naziris over again if you drank wine. And it is sheyutam miklala. So definitely, it should have this leniency that you have a heter to drink wine in a case where it's a mitzvah for you to drink wine. The pasuk says, "Mi yayin v'sheicha yazer." This is also an extra pasuk because the pasuk already says you shouldn't eat anything that comes out of a grapevine. Then it says yayin v'sheicha yazer, which is lesser yayin mitzvah ke yayin rishus. This is telling you that you're not allowed to drink wine even if it's a mitzvah, like wine in a case where it's just voluntary. Right, the Gemara continues, "V'yayin yister esakel kavachayim mituma." If you drink wine during your naziris, logically you would think that this does nullify your naziris. You should have to start over again, and it's a kavachaymer from tumah. Ma tumah shehotra miklala. By tumah, I see that there's a leniency, that there's a heter for tumah by a mes mitzvah. So he said it's a sakoil. So over there's this stringency that you have to start over again if you become tumah. Yayin shalayota miklala. Wine, which is more stringent. There's no heter for it ever. Like kolshka sheyista, definitely should have the stringency that you should have to start over again if you drank wine. Makras, the pasuk clearly says, that if you didn't keep your naziris and the first days you had before fall away, ki tomei nizrai. And the reason is because you became tomei. So this tells you, only if you became tomei during your naziris, that nullifies those days, but not drinking wine. The Gemara asks, you would think that if you cut your hair during your naziros, it should nullify all the days and you have to start over again. Why kavachaymer mitome? I should make a kavachaymer from tome. Uma tome shloyasa ba mitame kimitame. By tome, the mitame is not similar to the mitame. What is the mitame? What is the mitame? The mitame is the person that's making you tame, causing you to become tame. Someone that's bringing a mess and touching it to your body. Mitame is the Nazir himself that's becoming tame. So, when it comes to the halacha of tumah by a nazir, the person that became tameh was over isser. The person that made you tameh was not over any isser. The Gemara is going to bring soon the source for this. So we have this leniency by tumah, but nevertheless it's stringent. Say seres esakail. If you become tameh in the middle, you have to start all over again. Tiglachas, when it comes to cutting your hair, here there's a stringency she'asuba migaleach kemizgaleach, that the one that cuts your hair and the Nazir himself, his hair gets cut, both of them are over Eisr. And again, the Gemara will bring the pasuk for this soon. So Ein so because we see it's so much more stringent, Ein definitely logically I would say that a Nazir that cut his hair in the middle of his Naziris, he should have to start over again. The pasuk says, that when does the days you kept of Naziris fall away, only if you became Tomei. Which means tumas yiseres asakel v'entaglachas yiseres asakel. Only tumah nullifies the days of your naziris, but not if you cut your hair. Again, the Gemara asks, "V'tumah nasaba mitame kimitame." This halacha that we just said that by tumah the nazir that became tumah was over iser, but the one that was mitame him is not over an iser. But the question is, I should compare the mitame, the one that makes you tumah, to the mitame, to the nazir himself that became tumah. And I should say that they're both over Isser, kavachayim v'teglachas. And I should learn this with a kavachayim from the halacha of the one that cuts this hair. If by teglachas, which is lenient, and it does not nullify his days of naziris, ela shloishim. You just has to make sure he has 30 days that he didn't cut his hair. But nevertheless, there you have a chumreh that not only the nazir that cut his hair is over Isser, but even the one that cuts his hair is also over Iser. Tumah Shiseseres, a tumah which is more stringent and it nullifies all your days of Naziris, Shiseres es Akoil, and it didn't say Nasaba mitame kimitame. For sure, the halacha should be that not only the Nazir, but also the one that makes you Tameh should also be over Iser. So the Gemara Omakra, the pasuk says Vitime Roish Nizrai. What do I learn out from this? Limitame Roish Nizrai. Vitime means the one that his head becomes Tameh, he is the one that's over the Iser, but not the one that caused him to become Tameh. V'tiglachas, the Gemara asks the question. Now, if so, the Gemara says, let's make a kavachayim in the reverse. V'taglachas lo nasaba migaleach kimizgaleach. That by taglachas, by cutting the hair, we should not compare the one that his hair got cut, the Nazir, to the one that cuts his hair. And they shouldn't both be over there. So why? Kavachayim mitumah. I should learn this with the kavachayim from tumah. Which is stringent. And yeah, it nullifies all the days of Naziris. Nevertheless, we're lenient and we don't compare the person that became Tomei to the person that caused him to be Tomei. Teglachas, which is more lenient, and if you cut your hair, it's so you don't have to keep all days in Naziris over again. Only 30 days. For sure, we shouldn't be so stringent to compare the Nazir himself that cut his hair to the one that cut his hair. The Torah says, Tar lo yaver al reishai. What do we understand from this pasuk? Lo yaver, that a razor should not pass through his head. So, because it says not pass through means not only the Nazir himself. Kribe lo yaver hu, lo yaver lacher. So the lo yaver means nobody is allowed to have a razor go over the Nazir's head, not the Nazir himself, and not someone else that puts the razor over his head. So the lashon of his pasuk indicates that not only the Nazir himself is over, but the other person that cuts his hair is also over. The Gemara continues again with teglachas lo tutar miklolo teglachas. There shouldn't be any heter to cut the hair ever. We said before in the Mishnah that by teglachas there's a heter to cut the hair if he's a mitzayder, but there shouldn't be any heter. Kavachayim miyayin. I would learn it with a kavachayim from the issa of drinking wine for the Nazir. Wine, if you drink wine in the middle of your Naziris, you just continue going. It doesn't nullify any of your Naziris. So over there by the wine, nevertheless, there's a stringency that there's no heter to drink wine ever, even for a mitzvah. Teglachas, shesiseres. If you cut your hair in the middle of your Naziris, so it does nullify some days. You have to have 30 days. Most definitely, we should be stringent that there should never be a heter to cut your hair when you're a Nazir, even if it's for the purpose of a mitzvah. So the Torah says, and this is the mitzvah by a mitzayra, he has a mitzvah to cut his hair, even if he's a Nazir. Over there the Torah specifies Roishai, and Amar Achmana Roishai, Amar Achmana is a kanai. The Torah clearly says that he has to cut the hair of his head and cut his beard. And we learned this before already in the Gemara from these extra words, Roishai is a kanai. It already says he has to cut all his hair. It specifies Roishai and Zakanai to tell you that even if he's a mitzayra, even if this mitzayra that is a Nazir, he still has a mitzvah to cut his hair. Back to the Gemara says, V'teglachas leitister klal at the glachas. A person that cut his hair during his naziris, it shouldn't at all nullify any of his naziris. It just should be able to continue going. I should learn this with the kavachaymer from wine. If by wine we see that there's a stringency, that there's never a heter to drink wine even for a mitzvah. But nevertheless there's a leniency that if he drank wine, it doesn't nullify any days of his naziris. So by teglachas, where there's a leniency, that there's a heter for a case where there's a mitzvah, and it in definitely it shouldn't nullify the days of his naziris. So the Gemara says, but over here you can't learn out from wine because bi'inan gidul seyer v'holeke. But the reason why we have to be seiser is because 30 days is the minimum amount of time that you have to have the hair to be able to do the mitzvah, to cut the hair at the end of the naziris. And that's not applicable to wine. So we can't compare, we can't learn out this kavachemer from wine. Now, there's reason to say also logically the opposite, that by wine, if one drank wine in the middle of his naziris, the halacha should be that he should have to count over at least 30 days. Even if it's not going to nullify his whole naziris, but he should have to count over 30 days. And learn it out with a kavachayim from this halacha by cutting the hair. If when it comes to cutting the hair, so there's a heter when it's a mitzvah, so there's a leniency. Nevertheless, I said as So there's a stringency that it's saisa 30 days. Yayin shalei utam eklaloi. So wine, there's never a heter to drink wine during your Naziris. Ain't it in sheyister? Definitely, if you drank wine in the middle of your Naziris, there should be a chumrah that you should have to wait an additional 30 days. So the Gemara again says you can't compare this halacha of wine to cutting the hair because midiyu taimeh ela mishum gidul seya. The only reason why, but if you cut your hair in the middle of your Naziris, you have to wait again, is because you need 30 days. You have to have significant amount of hair to cut at the end of the Naziris. Gabayayin, but by wine, that doesn't apply. Hakam Saida, his hair is there, he didn't touch his hair. So by wine, there's no reason to learn out from the hair that he's going to have to count another 30 days. Okay, what's the halacha of the Nazir that has to cut his hair in a situation that it became Tomei? Besides the halacha that at the end of the Naziris you have to cut your hair when you're Tahir, a Nazir that became Tomei has to be Matayed himself, and at the 7th day he goes to the mikveh, he cuts his hair, and then on the 8th day he brings the carbon, as the Mishnah says. So Ketzad, what does he do? You have to spray on him from the Para Aduma on the 3rd day, on the 7th day of his tumah, umegaleach b'shvi, and then he cuts his hair on the 7th day, umevi karbanisa b'shmini, and he brings the karbanis for this tumah on the 8th day, and he starts over the Naziris again. This is pretty much clearly in the psukim and the Torah that speak about this. Now, v'im gilach b'shmini, what happens if he delayed cutting his hair a day? He cut his hair on the 8th day. Maybe you karbanisa by bayayin. So then he could still bring his karbanis on the 8th day, on the very same day that he cut his hair. This is Rabbi Akiva's opinion. So the fact that he delayed cutting his hair, he does not have to delay the bringing of his karbanis. Amalei Rab Tarfon, so Rab Tarfon asks Rabbi Akiva, Ma ben zeh le'mitzayre? Why is there a distinction between the Nazir and a mitzayre? If you look in the psukim by a mitzayre, it says they're basically the same thing. That a mitzayre, so he has to be mitayed himself for 7 days. On the 7th day he cuts his hair, and then on the 8th day he brings karbanis. And over there by mitzayre, the halacha is if he delayed cutting his hair till the 8th day, Rabbi Akiva himself said that then you're going to have to delay your karbanis to the following day, to the 9th day. So Rabbi Tarfon is asking Rabbi Akiva, why by Nazir do you say that it's not the same? That if you delayed and you cut your hair on the 8th day, you still could bring your karbanis on the same day, on the 8th day. Rabbi Akiva answered him, when it comes to the Nazir, his tara, his purification process really depends just on the number of days. So when he comes to the 7th day, he's really pure. Whether he cut his hair or not, the tara doesn't depend upon that. So really on the 7th day, he's pure, he went to the mikveh. Now, the cutting of the hair is another point. True, he has to cut his hair in order that he should be able to start his Naziris over again and now keep his hair growing. But the tara is not totally in that though. The tar is automatically on the 7th day. So therefore, regardless of when he cut his hair on the 8th day, which is the day after he became toir, he brings his karbanis. But on the other hand, when it comes to a mitzayre, his purification is not just dependent on the days, but it also depends on the cutting of his hair. And right, so by the mitzayre, he has to cut his hair and then go to the mikveh. So that has to be the actual cutting of the hair holds up his tara. And therefore the carbon is only brought on the following day after your tara is complete. So since by the mitzayre the taglachas itself is part of the process of his tara, so he could only be mitayr himself on whatever day he was mitayr himself, on the 7th day or on the 8th day, the carbon will always be on the following day. So it could be on the 9th day if he delayed it for 1 day. Sagt the Gemara, or the Gemara asks, Kibla minei oiloi. Did Rab Tarfon accept the answer of Rabbi Akiva, the explanation that he gave him, the distinction between Mitzayra and Nazir? Or he didn't accept it? Or maybe Rab Tarfon still holds that if you delayed cutting your hair by the Nazir, you'll also have to delay your karbanis to the following day. Tashema, so the Gemara says, I'll bring you an eye for this. The Tani Hillel taught, Gilach Beshmini, if this Nazir cut his hair on, this is not Hillel from the Hillel Azakin, the Tana, this is a Hillel which was an Ameira, he was much later. So Akapanim, so Hillel taught, Gilach Bishmini, if, I'm not sure if he's an Ameira, but this Hillel is not Hillel Azakin, it's a different Hillel. So Gilach Bishmini, if he cut his hair on the 8th day, maybe the Karbanis of Bichi. So then he's going to have to wait till the following day and bring his Karbanis on the 9th day. Now, so this seems that there's an opinion here that he didn't accept what Rabbi Akiva said, that it doesn't matter. You could still bring the carbon on the same day that you cut your hair on the 8th day. Now, if you're going to say Rab Tarfon accepted Rabbi Akiva's answer, so Leisi Karbanaisav Bishmini, he should be allowed to bring his karbanis on the 8th day, like Rabbi Akiva said in the Mishnah. So this is a clear ayah that Rab Tarfon did not accept the answer of Rabbi Akiva. So the Gemara says, not necessarily. Amar Rava loy kashya. So Rava says, no, there's no question from this brayso, because it depends what happened here. Ha the toval b'shvi. In the Mishnah, the case is that he waited the 7 days, the Nazir waited the 7 days, and he went to the mikvah on the 7th day. He didn't yet cut his hair until the following day, but he went already to the mikvah on the 7th day. And so then we say that even if he cut his hair on the 8th day, he can bring the karbanis on that day as well, because he already finished his purification on the 7th day. And the loy taval b'shvi. And this braisa here that Hill says that he has to wait until the 9th day, the reason is because he didn't tavel until the 8th day. Not only he didn't cut his hair until the 8th day, he didn't tavel either until the 8th day. So therefore he's going to have to wait until the 9th day. True, Rabbi Akiva would agree to this too, exactly. Even though the braisa, the Rashi points out, even though the braisa says the halacha gilach b'shmini, but according to what the Gemara is saying now, it doesn't mean just gilach, it means also he didn't go to the mikveh until the 7th day. Usually people at the conclusion of Naziris would cut their hair and go to the mikveh on the same day, so it uses that lashon. But it really is referring to the going to the mikveh on the 7th day. On the 7th day, or he delayed it until the 8th day. Talk to Gemara, it brings up now another topic which is related to this halacha we're speaking about regarding a Nazir. So Amar Abaya said, Ashkechtinu lechavre de Rav Nassim bar Hoshia. I found the friends of Rav Nassim bar Hoshia, the Yasvim v'Ka'omrin. They were sitting and they were teaching the following braysa. The pasuk says regarding a zav, U'bal ufnei Hashem el Pesach el Moed u'nesanim el HaKoyin. So he comes to the entrance of the El Moed and he gives his karbanis that he has to bring to the Koyin. So now, when is he allowed to come onto Har HaBayis, to stand right at the opening of the Azara to give its karbanis to the Koyin? Bizman shehu toval. It's only on the 7th day. Now this Azav has to count 7 days to be metayed himself, and then on the 7th day he has to come and stand there at the entrance of the Azara and bring his karbanis. He was toivel already. He already went to the mikveh. Not only that, v'asa head of shemesh. He has to wait until sundown as well, and only then is he allowed to bring his karbanis to give to the kohen. That's the halacha that they learned from this pasuk over here. Okay, so let me just explain a few simple details regarding a zav. First of all, there's 3 different types of zavin. There's a zav that saw one emission, then he's just a zav for 1 day, and the following day he's going to be tar, goes to the mikveh, he's tar the following day. That's really called a balkeri. Then you have a zav that saw 2 emissions, so he has to actually wait 7 full days to be metired himself, go to the mikveh on the 7th day, but he doesn't have to bring any karbanis following that on the 8th day. Just metired himself in the mikveh, and then at night he's tar. Then you have a zav which saw 3 emissions, so then he has to wait 7 days, go to the mikveh on the 7th day, wait until at night, and then the following day he still has to bring karbanis to be metired himself. Okay, so over here we're talking about a zav that has to wait 7 days, and then he has to bring his karbanis. So what is now? Okay, this is what that's one thing about the zav, that he has to wait 7 days and bring his karbanis. Now the other halacha about the zav is a zav is not allowed to enter onto the Har HaBayis because he's tamei. A person that's tamei meis is allowed to go onto the Har HaBayis. He's allowed to come all the way up to the Azara, but a zav is not allowed to go into the Har HaBayis. So what is it saying over here? When is this zav allowed to come onto the Har HaBayis, to come all the way to the door of the Azara to bring his karbanis? After he went to the mikvah on the 7th day, it's not, and even that's not enough yet. He's going to have to wait until sundown, okay? Which means that after he went to the mikveh, so the level of the tumah of the zav is already minimized to some extent. He's called a tvul yom. He was already toivel, but that's not enough. He's going to have to wait until at night, and then at night, he's going to be able to bring his karbanis to the kohen, go onto the Har HaBayis, and come there to the door of the Azara to bring his karbanis. So from this we learn out that Tava v'asa had of Shemesh in, that if he went to the mikveh and he waited until sundown, then he's allowed to bring his karbanis to the kohen. Loi Tava v'asa had of Shemesh loi. But if he didn't go to the mikveh yet and he didn't wait till sundown either, he's not allowed to go and bring his karbanis to the kohen. So now, what does this mean? Abaye understood from what they were saying, Alma Kasavar, that means that they hold, or they brought a brisa that holds, Tvul Yoim Shel Zav Kizav Dami. A Zav that did go to the mikveh, but he's still on that day. He didn't wait until sundown yet. He has the same status as Tumah as the Zav himself. And just like a Zav himself cannot come until the Harabayis, the Tvul Yoim, the Zav that already went to the mikveh on the seventh day, also can't come unto the Harabayis. Now, where do we learn this out from? So over here in this Gemara, you have, on the side of the Gemara, you have the pasuk that it says by a Zav. So it says, Uvayoim Hashmini. Vayayim Hashmini yikach l'shtei seidim v'shnei v'neyayim above fnei Hashem al Pesach el Moed and the son of Malakayim. So what does the pasuk say? The pasuk says on the 8th day, he's allowed to come and bring his karbanos to the kain. So since the Torah says that this Zav only comes on the 8th day, what that means is, on the 7th day, a Zav can never come bring his karbanos to the kain, under no circumstances. Why? Because on the 7th day, even if he already went to the mikveh, it doesn't matter. He still has the same level of tumah as a Zav that did not go to the mikveh. Now, Abai says to this, you can't learn it out from that pasuk. Why not? Because I told the friends of Rab Nosson Bar Oishiyeh that if you're going to learn out from that pasuk regarding Gazav, so Elamata Gabin Nazir Tameh. Say the same thing when it comes to a Nazir that became Tameh, and he also has to count 7 days, and he also brings his karbanos on the 8th day. And what does it say by the pasuk of this Nazir? Vehevi Yisam, or there's another gersa here because it doesn't say in the pasuk Vehevi. It says Yavi Shtei Taidim, and he brings it El Akayin El Pesach El Mayid. So Emes Hayuba. When does this Nazir that became Tomei come and bring his karbanos to the Kayin? Bizman Shetoval Va'asa Head of Shemesh. He comes and he brings his karbanos. You're going to say, based on these karbanos here, based on the pasuk here, that he could only bring his karbanos when there's head of shemesh. Meaning, not only he went to the mikvah on the 7th day, but it's already after it became night, or only the next day. Why would I say this? Because just like by the Zav, it says by Yoim Hashmini, that he has to wait until it's night, until it's the 8th day already. I would say that it's the same thing b'negeya to the Mitzayre, not Mitzayra, again, the Nazir that became Tamei, over there it also says, by Yom HaShmini, that you have to wait until the 8th day. But the question is, why would a Nazir that became Tamei have to wait until the 8th day? The halacha of a Nazir that becomes Tamei and the halacha of a Zav is not the same. I mentioned before that by a Zav, he's not allowed to go into Harabayis as long as he's a Zav. That's the tumah of a Zav. When it comes to a Tmei Meis, you're allowed to go into the Harabayis. The only place a Tmei Meis is not allowed to enter into is into the Azara itself. But he's allowed to go into the Harabayis. So if so, the question is, so Mechti, let's see. Share Nikna Eiche Kaime, where is that entrance? Shar Nikner, where you would come to bring your karbanis? B'Share Levia. That's in the Shari Levia, or others like greatest over here, not Shari Levia, but Machna Levia. This is on Harabayis, which has the status of Machna Levia. What does that mean? That's a place where a Tmei Meis is always allowed to enter. And V'Hatanya, we learned in the Braisa, Tmei Meis Mutar L'Kanis B'Machna Levia. A Tmei Meis is always allowed to enter into this area. And V'Loi Tmei Meis Bulvad, not only a person that became Tommy of a Meis, Ela Afila Meis Atzmai. You're allowed to bring a dead body into the Harabayis, into that area as well. Shonemar, we see this from what it says by Moshe Rabbeinu in the Midbar. Vayikach Moshe es atzmis Yosef imay. Moshe Rabbeinu had the bones of Yosef. He carried it with him throughout the places we Yidden went to in the Midbar. What does that mean? My imay b'mechitzasai, imay b'machna levia. He had the body of Yosef with him in Machna Levia wherever he was. So the point that Abai is asking is that how can you say that by the Zav I learn out from the pasuk where it says by Yom Hashmini that even after he toivel he has to wait until the next day that he's going to bring his karbanis, because even though he already toiveled in the mikveh he still can't come into the Harabayis because he's still just like a Zav. But if you're learning that out from the B'yom Hashmini that it says by a Zav, you should have to say the same by the B'yom Hashmini that it says by a Nazir that became Tamei. They should have to wait till the next day after the 7th day to bring his karbanis to the Kayin. But why? Why should he have to wait until the next day? He's only a Tmei Meis. A Tmei Meis is allowed to go on to this place in the Harabayis. Elamai, the point is, you can't learn out from B'yom Hashmini that he has to wait until the following day to bring his karbanis. And he doesn't have to wait, correct? Not by the Nazir that became Tommy does he have to wait, and not by the Zav does he have to wait. So Elama Abaye, so we're going to learn here till the Mishnah. So Abaye says, Tvul Yoim Shel Zav Kizav Dami. That's the Girsa in our Gemara, but we're going to go with the Girsa of the Rosh and the Taisvis. They say Tvul Yoim Shel Zav Lav Kizav Dami. The truth is that a Zav, once he went to the mikveh, his level of Tumeh is not anymore like the Zav himself, and he's allowed to bring he's allowed to walk into the Azara, that is. But Vafila Achi, but nevertheless, over here, what we're talking about is this Zav has to bring karbanis. This zav, it's not only that he has to go to the mikveh. As I mentioned before, there's two types of zav. There's a zav that saw twice in a mission, and then he just has to wait 7 days and go to the mikveh, and then he's tar at night. And then there's the zav that saw 3 times, and it's not enough that he goes to the mikveh, but even after night, he still is not completely pure until he brings his karbanis the following day. So vafilahachi kiven the mechusa kapare loy ayel. Because he's a mechusa kapara, so therefore he's not allowed to enter. In other words, what Abai is saying is, the friends of Rav Nosson Bar Hoshia, they wanted to say that a zav, not because of the mechusa kapara, a zav, even after he went to the mikveh, his level of tumah remains the same as a zav that did not go to the mikveh. Abai says that's not true. By a zav, only if he saw 3 emissions, and then he's going to have to bring a carbon, then I say that even after he went to the mikveh, because he still has to bring the karbanis, and he's also at full yain, it's still the sundown didn't happen yet, so then I say that he's not allowed to bring his karbanis. And on this, there's no question from the halacha of a tmei meis that we just asked, because by a nazir that's a tmei meis, so by him there's no halacha of mechusa kapara. Even though a nazir that's a tmei meis does have to bring karbanis the following day, but the karbanis he brings in the following day has nothing to do with being metired him from his tumah. That's the halacha of a nazir. In order for him to start over his naziris, he has to bring those karbanis. But there's no halachas of mechusa kapara by a nazir that became tamei. So again, only by a tvul yoim of a zav that also is a mechusa kapara, then I say that he's not allowed to enter into the harabayas until the following day, until the 8th day. And he brings over here the source of the pasuk, because the pasuk that we mentioned before, what does it say in the pasuk? Bayayim hashmini yikach leishtei tayrim shnei bnei yayna. And what does he do? What does this zav do? A bal of Hashem el Pesach oil mayed. He comes in front of the Eibush Pesach oil mayed. So the Gemara now is going to focus on that pasuk. If the zav is only standing in Machna Leviyah is on Harabayis. He's not yet inside. He can't go inside the Azara, for sure not. Didn't bring his karbanis yet. He's only in Machna Leviyah. Amaika Karile oil mayit. Why is the pasuk saying that he's in the oil mayit? So the memre, what the pasuk is coming to say is ma hasam, just like going inside the oil mayit. B'chusa kapara lo ya'ayel. If he didn't bring his karbanis yet, he's not allowed to enter. Aflo Machna Leviyah nami b'chusa kapara lo ya'ayel. So too, this zav that he taivled already, but he's still at full yaim. This sundown didn't happen yet. And he's also a mechusa kapara. So there's 2 problems with him. He's a tful yaim and a mechusa kapara, so therefore he is not allowed to enter inside the harabayis. Or again, he's not allowed to enter, he's not allowed to enter into the harabayis. He's going to have to wait until sundown. Yeah. That's the halacha we're learning out of here. Again, so the point that Abai is saying is that usually we don't compare a tful yaim of a zav to a zav. But in a case where he has to bring a carbon, so he's not just a tful yoim, but he's also mechusa kapara, and that you don't find by a nazir which is tameh. By a nazir which is tameh, the carbon that he brings is not related to his tumah. So over here we say that he's not allowed to enter into the harabayis. Now the Gemara brings the source for this. V'hasam minalan. How do you b'chlal know b'negeya to a zav which is mechusa kapara that he's not allowed to enter into the harabayis? The Tanya, the pasuk says tameh. There's the extra words that the pasuk says tamei that he's still tamei. Larabis tful yoim. That means that tful yoim is not allowed to enter into the azara. Right. So this is he didn't bring his again. The Gemara is bringing here a source that mechusa kapara is not allowed to enter into the azara itself, not only the harabayis. So the Braisa says, first of all, it says tamei. It's marba tful yoim. That he's not allowed to enter into the azara. Then it says again, oy to masay boy, he's still tamei. L'rabbeis mechusa kapara, that says that even a mechusa kapara is not allowed to enter into the azara.